in
Well,
marketing.
I missed everyone last week. It seems like a long time since we've been together. 2 weeks seems like a lifetime in this business. So delighted to see everybody again and continue our exploration into 10 principles practically guaranteed to deliver success for you and your business. We're up to topic number 5, which is growth. Now, we're talking about growth here in terms of learning growth, personal learning or professional learning, as opposed to growth of your business. So, just to be clear, we're talking about growth as a person, as a leader, as a professional. So, I wanted to ask you, how many of you have some kind of a learning process that you engage in regularly, daily or weekly, besides being on phone calls like with CSC or somewhere else?
I
Wayne, what is it that you do besides being on phone calls here where you can learn things?
Well, I try to watch the CSC videos because
Hmm.
of course I can't make all the calls. So I use it as a ritual. And if there's one specific thing that I want to learn more about, like negotiating, when someone wants to reduce your commission, I go in and I look at the videos over and over and over again until it sinks in.
Got it. Thank you. How about you, Martha? What is it that you do besides hop on calls like these?
One thing I do is I try to read every day.
Hmm.
Um, so I set that goal a couple of years ago where I try to read every day.
Got it. So reading is obviously it's been a way to learn since the beginning of writing in papyrus, and there's nothing wrong with having that as part of your strategy. The question is, do you have a strategy? I used to be a competitive racer, ski racer when I grew up, and so when you're in a sport like that, whether it's skiing or let's say tennis or gymnastics, you're always working with coaches. And coaches always have you focusing on one thing or another, something about your mindset or something about what you do physically in your sport. You're always focused on something. And sometimes a new coach would come into the picture. A new coach would be hired or they'd show up or something. They always had the same question, which is, what are you working on right now? And so I want to challenge all of you with that question. What are you working on right now on yourself? And what goes along with that, of course, is how do you do that? Chirag and I are so delighted to see so many of you show up in our calls week after week after week. That shows us how dedicated you are to finding some way of growing, developing yourself in ways that pay off for your business, for your clients, for the world. We love that. It's evidence of a commitment to learning and growth. And yet there's so much more that we could do. And so we want to spend a little time this week and next week thinking about what is our strategy for learning and growth outside of these particular calls. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do anything. If these calls work for you and they're constantly stimulating your thinking, giving you new tips or tricks or things to try, and some of those things pay off for you, of course, there's nothing wrong at all in doing that. But as long as we're on this topic of growth and there's a principle associated with it, which I'll share with you a little later, we can ask ourselves, what is my overall strategy? If I were to kind of compare this to like a marriage, if I would say, well, what is it that you do to make your marriage work? And you might say, well, I listen to my significant other. Great. That's great. But is that the only thing you can do? Is it the only thing you are doing? Is it sufficient to get you where you want to be? So when we're talking about learning and growth today, we're going to be looking at a couple other things that kind of inflect how we do what it is we do when we're learning. So let me pull up a few slides. We'll talk about it. All right. So growth. What is growth? Well, we can think about it in some different ways, and I put down 3 different definitions or way of thinking about what growth is. You don't have to necessarily accept any of these or all of these, but just something to stimulate a little bit of thought when we think, what are we talking about when we're talking about internal or personal growth and learning? One way to think about it is progressive development over time. That is that we're in a certain place, and over time we move to another place and another place and another place. And then perhaps another word for that is growth, especially if it's intentional and purposeful and perhaps along some kind of direction, let's say, rather than totally haphazard. And then normally that's what we mean by development, right? There's some kind of a purposeful addition of whatever. Another way to think about it is replacing a certain way of thinking with a different way of thinking. That is, when you were 16 years old, you had a certain way of seeing the world. But by the time you were 25, those 10 years of growth and experience, life experience, showed you that there's a different way to think about things. And probably in your professional career, you've had something similar. Perhaps when you first started doing this work, you had a certain idea of what was necessary to be successful. And you did those things and you had whatever level of success. But as time went on, you've learned other things, you've seen other people's things that stimulated your own thinking or inspired you in one way or another. And so your original thinking got shifted or added to, or at least replaced with some different way of thinking. Or how about something like this, maybe a little more of a dictionary style, acquiring skills, perspectives, and abilities through experience, exploration, and reflection. So you can see there's a lot in there. We can acquire skills, we can acquire perspectives, we can acquire abilities, but it really hints, the second part hints to the more complex nature of learning. We can do it through experience for sure. We can do it through exploration for sure. And of course, reflection is a key part of this, especially when it comes to leading yourself and your business. Reflection, self-reflection about who you are, how you bring yourself to life, how you bring yourself to your work, how you bring yourself to your clients. These things really matter. So all these things may be part of learning or growth in one way or another. If we ask another question like, what can you grow or what can you develop? Well, there's a bunch of things in there. We probably could make a very long list, but there's a few that I wanted to highlight this morning. Mindset. You can grow or develop your mindset over time, which includes a lot of pieces. To what degree are you positive about the world around you? What do you pay attention to things that you see as opportunities and possibilities, or do you pay attention to things that you see as risks or threats, kind of a negative mindset, let's say? Of course, you can grow your resilience, you can grow your vision. That might be something about clarification, like clarifying what is your vision for your business, what is your vision for your life, what is your vision for how your business ought to work? Or maybe it's expanding that vision in some way. Maybe it includes more services down the road, like staging or something like that, that you don't typically currently do. You can grow your skills. We all have skills. We display them every day. We get whatever results that we get out of the application of our particular skills. But you're all here because, in large part, you want to improve your skills. When we ask people, why do you come to our calls? Many people say, I want to get better at the sales process, or I want to do what I do better. And many of them point to specific skills like handling objections or something like that. Knowledge is a more general thing that's a part of our success. We can understand marketing as a concept. We can understand tech tools. We can understand management and leadership as concepts. These are things that we can build over time that don't necessarily apply every minute of every day, but they certainly do apply quite frequently and regularly over time. And finally, some other personal capabilities. You might call these skills. I'm not sure if they're exactly skills or they're capabilities. But your accountability for your business and its success, your awareness about your way of bringing yourself to your work and how your business works, your creativity. Maybe that's a skill. Maybe it's just a characteristic or a capability. It doesn't really matter to me. But you can see our growth and learning can go in many, many different directions. And so that's why I want to challenge everybody to think about what is it that we can do besides being on these calls, because these calls can cover a lot of these bases, but maybe not everything. So maybe reading is a great way to augment what it is you do here. Maybe seeing other videos that you might not normally watch otherwise is another way to do that. Another way to do that might be sitting down with another agent once a month and talking about creativity or accountability or leadership or whatever. So many ways that we can stimulate our own ability to think and develop ourselves. Now, what is it that gets in the way of growth? What is it that typically prevents people from growing? Well, I've talked with a lot of agents and people in other fields, coaching them as well. 3 or 4 things consistently come up. See if any of these are something like what may have popped into your head at one time or another. Arrogance. I've been doing this forever. I already know it all. That's a big one. Like, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. Really, there's nothing more for me to learn. Yeah, maybe I'll tweak things on the edges a little bit, but that's it. Number 2, self-satisfaction. I'm good enough already. Hey, I sold, 58 million worth last year. So obviously I'm in the top 10% in my market and I'm good enough already. And finally, this one. This is the big killer for real estate more than other fields that I've found. I need to focus on profitability or customer satisfaction or marketing or organization or my CRM or this, that, or the other thing, is the list is a mile long. And I never get around to doing anything other than the most day-to-day, what's right in front of me right now kind of a thing. So let me just ask you to put into the chat, and I appreciate everyone's honesty here. Which one of these, number 1, 2, or 3, is something that you could see yourself falling into at one time or another? Or perhaps you've probably said to yourself at one time or another in the past. Just put a 1 or 2 or 3 or combination, whatever. See a bunch of 3s, a couple of 2s. Yeah, 3 is the most common one that I see by far for agents. And I haven't seen it so much in other industries, but certainly anyone who runs a whole business is really, really challenged to stay focused on any one particular thing because there's so many bases that we need to cover. And so if that is a challenge for us, we need to ask ourselves, to what extent are we hurting our business in the long run because we're not growing or developing ourselves? And we may say, I need to make my business succeed, so I'm doing this right now for my business to succeed today. But learning and growth really isn't just about today. It's really about, a year from today or 3 years from today or 5 years from today. Like other parts of the business, we have to find some way to continue our focus on what's important for the long term while we solve the problems of the short term. So what is it that promotes growth? Well, here are a few things. Humility, the idea that no matter how knowledgeable you are, how successful you are, how beloved you are by your clients and others, there's always more for you to learn. If you can stay in humility, there's always more opportunity for success in your business. 2, taking the long view, to recognize that unless you're close to retirement or you're close to get out of this business, remind yourself you'll be here 5 years from today. And anything that you can do that's going to pay off over time, if you have a 5-year horizon or a 7-year horizon or a 10-year horizon, that's a tremendous amount of value that you're going to get over multiple years in the future. If you can gain a new skill, if you can gain a capability, right? We talk so much about, really grooving your value prop or your pitch, things like that. These are important skills that if you get them right now, they pay off year after year after year down the road. And finally, focus. We have to remember that when we're in a business, whether it's our own business, one person, or we lead a small team of people or a large team of people, success always starts with you. You are the leader of your own life. You're the leader of your business. You may be the leader of other people who are in your business. But everything starts with you. There's nothing more important to the success of your business than you. And so if you want to invest in your business, what you can really say is you need to invest in yourself. So we're delighted that you invest in yourselves by being part of our community here. We'd love to see you so regularly. And we want to challenge you to keep thinking of other ways to invest in yourself, whether that's buying a book and reading 1 book a month or 5 minutes a day or whatever it is, or sitting down with other agents or joining some kind of an affinity group, something like that that helps you stimulate your own thinking or build your own skills and capabilities. So how does one grow? Well, there's kind of a very specific process here that you'll recognize is quite similar to the cascade of questions we talked about before when we were talking about habits. Because learning and growth is a habit, right? Learning doesn't happen by accident. Learning happens partly through experience and then reflection of the experience. That is how you interpret what it is that's happened to you, as well as an organized, systematized process for stimulating thinking that helps lead to a different way of thinking or a new kind of skill that you can practice, something like that. And so essentially it's pick one thing that you would like to grow. And we talked before in that previous slide, creativity, resilience, accountability, leadership, management, so many things besides value prop or pitch or something like that we can think about over time. And you can focus on it for as much time as you think is important for you to get some value. It could be a 1-month process, could be a 90-day process. We've talked about that this year. Could be a 1-year process, could be a 5-year process. And there's some things that maybe you could practice working on forever. For example, listening is one that comes to mind for me. Envision what success looks like in that space. For example, if it were listening, I've told my clients many times, you probably heard me say this before, how do you know you're listening very well? Does anybody remember? If you remember, jot it into the chat. How do you know you're really listening well? Thank you, Martha. Someone tells you you are a good listener, or they say, thank you for listening. This is powerful evidence that you have impacted them profoundly. Because in the 10 seconds that it takes for them to say, you're a good listener, or thank you for listening, they spent 10 seconds of their life to do that because they felt so powerfully affected. They felt compelled to do that with their life for those 10 seconds as opposed to anything else. They could have grabbed a glass of wine. They could have gone for a walk with their dog. They could have turned on a TV game or a TV show or something like that. But no, they chose to say, I want you to know that you're a good listener. That's powerful evidence that you're listening well. And so in this particular example, envisioning what success or mastery looks like could be hearing someone say, you're a good listener, or thank you for listening once a quarter, or once a month, or once a week. I started doing the listening work a little over 20 years ago. And at that time, I just wanted to hear it once. It was a very rare and random comment that someone would ever say something like that. After I really focused on it for a while, I got it to hearing it quarterly, got it down to hearing it monthly. Now I hear it weekly, and I'm aiming next for hearing it daily. That's hard work. I find it very difficult to impact someone profoundly enough that someone will tell you every day, you're a good listener. But whatever your track record is, doesn't matter. Envision whatever success looks like for you in that area. And then that's what kind of becomes the starting point. Like work backwards from there. Okay, what is it I need to do? I need a consistent development process that's going to get me to that particular outcome. And so maybe it's practicing certain skills certain times a day. Maybe it's putting it in a time block into your calendar. Maybe it's talking to other people and getting ideas about how to handle something. You talk to one person a week, and 16 weeks, you've talked to 16 different people, you got 16 different perspectives. That could be a powerful learning experience for you. Or maybe it's doing something else online. There's so many things that could be part of this process. Wayne, thanks for mentioning the listening book. I'll grab a couple of titles next week and I'll just show them to everybody if that's okay with you. There's 4 or 5 books that I typically recommend. They're all good. And there's many other books that have a chapter here or there, but listening is one of the most important skills we have as humans, but it's not something that we emphasize too much in our particular culture. So adopting a consistent development process is how you're going to get to where you need to get to. Now, along with that, you need to understand what is it that might get in the way of me being successful, or what is it that can enhance my success? That's what building in support means. Maybe you need an accountability partner. Maybe you read a book and you be part of a book club with another agent, maybe an agent here in the CSC community or in the Compass community. Say, let's all read a book once a quarter and just talk about it once a quarter. Or let's read a book once a month and we'll just, book 30 minutes to talk it through. What was the most, valuable thing that you read in the book? Well, it was page 87 where they said X, Y, Z. Oh, great. For me, it was page 149, and here's why. Very simple steps that you can take as part of an organized process, especially if you feel that you need some support from others. And finally, stick with it for the appropriate time. Every learning process has a certain kind of validity period. It takes a little while for you to get the outcome from that practice. If I were a skier and I were to work on a particular aspect of my ski racing for one day, I can guarantee you it wouldn't get me very far because it takes longer to learn something like that. Leadership, same thing. I've been teaching and working with people, leaders from around the world for the last 20 years. And it's clear to me that leadership is a very long-term learning concept. And that's okay. The question is, can we stick with something long enough to get the payoff from it? That's all that's really about it. So let me just add one more piece here. When we think about the principle itself, we need to remember this, that if you're not growing, you're not just standing still, you may be falling behind somebody else who is. There is somebody out there today who's doing something to press themselves, to extend themselves, to grow themselves, to challenge themselves, to maybe even surprise themselves, to replace one way of thinking that they have with another. And if we choose not to do anything to grow ourselves over the long term, and we tell ourselves, well, it's so important for me to focus on getting this marketing piece out, or it's so important for me to, correct my CRM or whatever. Yes, those things are important. But if they're always to the detriment of you learning over time, then you're never going to advance the business perhaps past a certain level. There will be a ceiling that will always be limited by your capabilities or your perspectives. So how can you act on this or start acting on this today? A couple easy steps. One, look at the process that we just showed a couple of slides ago and choose one thing in your business to focus on. One thing that you think you would like to do better. Choose something small, that is, set a goal that's a small and achievable goal for you in that area. So it could be something like, I would like to broaden my ability to create my marketing pieces attractively. That is, I see that I always go back to the same basic, very limited color palette or very limited design schemes. How could I do something about that? Well, what I might do is I might choose to review the marketing materials of one agent that I respect and admire each week for the next 6 weeks. And just pick one each week, print out all their stuff, take a look at it, discuss it with your team. What do you like about this? What do you dislike about this? What do you think the clients might be attracted to? What do you think here might turn the clients off? How does this work for you? The font and the colors and the line work and all that stuff. You could have a conversation with people for, let's say, 5 weeks. It's relatively small. It's relatively doable. And if you add other people into it, maybe it is people from your team, or maybe it's another agent that you trust. Maybe each of the agents, picks 5 agents that they respect and admire. And then you've all got 10 to think about. By doing that, you can start to identify other ways that you might extend or broaden your own way of creating a marketing piece, for example. And then stick with it. That's the hard part for so many of us, is that we let life crowd in. We say, yep, this is a nice to have. It's not really a need to have. And so if something else comes up in my business today or tomorrow or the next day, I'll push this off. And that's okay to do once in a while. And sometimes it's necessary. But what I find over and over is we tell ourselves that it's necessary and we continually push the learning stuff off again and again and again and again. If I were to ask you, what are you able to do today that you weren't able to do 12 months ago? Would you be able to point to something? If I say, what new skill or capability have you acquired? What new knowledge or understanding do you have that you didn't have 6 or 12 months ago? Can you point to something? If so, that's great. If not, that's okay. You can still put a plan into place now. So let me pull this down. Okay. So I'm really curious to hear, what is it that this dialogue, or actually monologue up to now, is kind of like inspiring you to do for your own learning? Is there something in there that you say, you know what? I need to do something about X. Nobody. Okay, so that tells me that I've wasted everybody's time this morning. Oh, great. Okay, Melissa, please. And then we'll hear from Mavis.
I am going to make a concerted effort to learn how to use AI to make more time in my life.
Love that idea. Thank you. You're not the only one that's watching AI. And one way that you could speed up your learning would be to align with somebody else and say, find somebody else who's also interested in AI. And then talk about how could we both help each other by learning something about AI. And maybe somebody, it doesn't even have to be somebody in real estate. It could be somebody who's a doctor or somebody who's a lawyer or somebody else, and say, what is it that you'd like to learn about AI and how do you think you might be able to do it? And he or she might say, well, there's this, this free online webinar that's coming up tomorrow night at 6 p.m. and I was going to watch that. Great. Why don't you report back to me whatever it is that you think are some important, useful points in there? And I'll do X, Y, Z. Thank you. Let's hear from Mavis and then Andrea.
So I think I've told you already, the group already, that I sustained a pretty significant injury to my left arm, which taught me a whole bunch about customer service. We talked about that before. But I also realized when you're in pain, there's a whole bunch of other things in the world you can't see because you're too busy focusing on pain. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I have been committing to is to not focus on pain, no matter what the pain is. Now, I have physical pain right now, but there's pain in the business also. And to really make a concerted effort to not focus on that pain and to focus on whatever gift comes out of it, or to focus on solution rather than whatever the pain point is.
Yeah, got it. Great. So what I would suggest for somebody who wants to do that is write it down. Every time you have one of those episodes, and let's say in a week you might have 5 of them or 10 of them, who knows? Write down what that is so that you can look at it later. Because it's a reminder of where your mind is, that you took this challenging situation, but you brought something useful out of it. And you never know when you see all those things listed, what it might tell you about the possibility to reframe or to derive value from future challenging events as well. Thank you, Mavis. Andrea?
Hi, good morning. So I guess I have 2 things. One is, and I think many of us on this call, because they're familiar faces, we're all in high activity mode to learn all the new scripts, dialogues, laws, delivery, contracts
Right.
surrounding this this nonsense with the DOJ. So I'm really dialing in to work on that and being able to deliver it in a way that's palatable and explain and convey my value. And the second thing that I'd like to focus on is not just Chat GPT, but Chirag's GPT or whatever.
Yeah.
So
So it's something that we're really focused on, something that, Chirag has talked to a lot of people about, and he's really kind of leading our exploration into the topic as well. I think we are ahead of the game, certainly compared to other coaching companies and many other businesses. But as I'm saying, thank you, Martha, bye. But as I'm saying, there's more to learn. And just because we're a little ahead of the market right now, or we've been looking at this stuff a little more deeply than somebody else, doesn't mean we'll always be that way. And so AI is this huge potential disruptor, which offers a wonderful amount of opportunity as well as risk. And so, it becomes a lever that we can use in our business if we do it right. So it's a great opportunity to, align with somebody around that one as well, because probably all the good agents also have some kind of casual to serious interest in AI as well. And so you might be able to align with a couple others and say, how can we break up a little bit our learning on what this is? Maybe there's a way for somebody to look at, AI as far as reducing paperwork, or AI as far as customer service, or AI as far as, innovation, for example. There's so much information that's available these days, and other kind of case studies and examples that you can see out in the world in different businesses that can give us some ideas about what might apply to us. And of course, it's hard to predict the future because it's so early in this process that so many things are going to come from AI that maybe we can't quite predict right now.
yeah,
But having a learning process that you're plugged into that allows you to connect with others about it, or even just connect online and research stuff, is a huge advantage, and you'll find some value from that probably not far down the road. Mavis, you have another comment?
I should have
I'm
just
sorry,
said a
Andrea?
very distant second to all the stuff we have to deal with the DOJ and the new contrast. Very distant
Yep.
second. That's time
Yep, for
sensitive.
sure. Yeah, well, the whole DOJ stuff has been, like, this will go down as the year of DOJ. And, we've been talking about it for a while here. And, we've been predicting, we've been thinking, we've been talking with people, and no one knows exactly how it's all going to fall out. But again, that's what we're talking about here, is having some ability to project our attention to what's happening there and learn in a way that affects our business positively. And if it's just learning like what's going to happen next, or what's likely to happen next, or what are the potentials that could happen next, all of that is potentially extremely valuable to the business. Okay, Mavis?
So I just want to piggyback on what Andrea said about we're all like, I see a lot of people running around going, oh my God, what are we going to do? And yesterday, the broker of record in California for companies said something that I don't know if she said it before, sometimes you just hear it. So she said that when discussing new forms, for example, some of us have listings that are already signed, right? And now they're changing the listing agreement because you no longer do offer compensation in the MLS.
Right.
She said the way to say it is, there's been a change in business practices among the MLSs, and so we now have a new form because this, and she said, don't go down the whole DOJ this, DOJ that,
Mhm.
because of the settlement, whatever. She said, quite simply, it's a change of business practices among most MLSs across the country. And so we're no longer offering compensation, and we have to change the listing agreement if you do an addendum, whatever. And it hit me so much because then you're not like in defense mode, you're not in spitting bullets mode because you're so pissed off about this. And it's just a little change in business practices because so many people want to say it's a new law. Well, it's
Yep.
not a new law because it's just a change.
It's a
So-
new,
Yep.
it's a new mandate. It's not a law.
Yeah, but it's a change in business practices that the MLSs have
Well,
adopted.
You know, I always say there's two ways to learning at the speed of life, which is generally slow, or having an intentional, purposeful strategy for learning. And so, you know, the DOJ thing is unfolding in very slow, form. It's been going on for months. It looks like it's going to keep going on for a while. It's hard to find out really what's going on or where it's going to be. And you can kind of sit back and just watch, or you can have a learning process where you talk to people. Talk to as many people as you can, talk to different types of people, talk to other agents, talk to coaches, talk to people, the MLSs, talk to anybody that you can as part of a process. And, you could simply say to yourself, I will talk to a different person for the next 8 weeks about the whole DOJ thing. And I'm going to make a list of those people. And 3 of them are going to be agents, and 2 of them are going to be some MLS people I know, and somebody's going to be somebody I know who's way up in NAR somewhere. And I'm just going to talk with one of them over the next 8 weeks, each of them over the next 8 weeks. That's a carefully planned process that's a world apart from just whatever happens to catch your eye or fall into your lap, which will be learning at the speed of life. All right, we're at our time for today. So love to see everybody next week, where we're going to go a little further into this. Think some more between now and then about what it is that you are working on in yourself as we go forward. And if you don't have anything that you're working on personally, perfectly okay. We'll talk more about it next week.
Thank you, David.
All right. Have a great week, everyone. You're welcome. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.